God. You're all, my prayer is that you're all ready to continue to build upon these 21 days of prayer and fasting. This is a season and a time to prepare a plan, a proper plan to go out in your area of calling and in your position for the building. Today is the 9th day of our 21 days of prayer, the 18th of January, 2024. And today we'll be dealing with access your plan. We're dealing with access your plan. The focus will be about accessing your plan. And we can only access our plan if we're connected to the one who has called us, the one whom we are working for, the one whom we are building for. So first of all, ask yourself, are you qualified to build? And then be honest about how you feel about that answer, because a lot of people feel that they're not qualified, that they're ill-equipped, that they still need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things before they feel confident to move into that space, into that place that God is calling. So I want to, that yes, you are qualified. Even before you were formed in your mother's womb, God knew you. And he called you, and he anointed you, and he told you with God-given calling and assignment. But in this season of building, whatever the age you're at, whatever the season you're at, be you a student in school, whether it is in lower primary school, mid-primary, going to high school, in university, be you alive and breathing right now. In this season of building, it means there's a role God has for you somewhere upon this table, somewhere in this plan of kingdom agenda on the earth. God has a role for you to fill. That is why you have not died yet. That is why you have not exited the earth yet. That is why he has not called you home yet. There's still work for you to do. So you were chosen before time began, and you were called into a specific area of assignment that was going to be fulfilled in this dimension and in this season. So I want you to be confident, knowing that whatever it is you feel you lack, God has a way for you to fill that gap, even as you move into action. We must be ready to move into action. And we must step in, even when we are still afraid, we must go in afraid. We must trust that the Lord will give us strength and resources and time to build upon additional skills and competencies that are required to be fully effective, but we must go in. Today, we're talking about accessing our plan, which means that we need a plan. We must have a plan, a fully developed plan to go onto the stage with, to go to work with. And remember, the plan is a working document. As you move along, that plan can be adjusted by God. That plan can be adjusted by God's revelation of the process in season and in time. That plan will evolve according to the stage that you get to as far as the assignment is concerned. So I'm grateful for those of you who've taken this time of preparation very seriously, because day by day, we're being told, I hope that you're documenting, really making time and being intentional about drawing up a plan of how you're fulfilling your life assignment in this season. If you're a student, there's a reason why you're in that high school in this year and season of building. Ask yourself, what would God want me to do in my school? How does he want me to be a source of light in my school? How does he want me to impact and inspire my fellow students, all my teachers, all the administration or my environment in that school. Beyond going to school to learn, to read, and to pass exams, how does God want to use me to bring joy and peace and healing in my school? Are there people who draw strength from you, inspiration from you, joy because you've come to school? Be intentional and then make sure that God uses you to fulfill it to the maximum. Are you supposed to be using your gifts and talents in that school to display the glory of God? Because God can act and in a way that causes you to deliver supernatural results with academically, extracurricular, and area of sport. That when people ask, how did you do that? How do you do this? How do you excel like this? And your answer is God. People then want your God. And you begin to become a source of light in that space. We're accessing our plan, and this plan has to be built. You have to do your work. You have to put pen to paper. You have to use your journal. I'm grateful that the man of God has emphasized that we need to be journaling. Whether you're digital or you're analog. Those of you who are digi savvy, you have your notepads, you have your iPads, you have your notebooks, digital notebooks, whatever shape and form you do your plans, Excel, Microsoft Excel, whatever the shape and form, put down the plan in writing. If you use manual journals, pick your pen and paper and draw up this plan. Right now, because we are on assignment, in this season of building, we don't just go as we've seen in the past couple of days, and we're not just going to go to the stage to just build, just because we are building, and to be random. To have optimal results is to have a good plan. Is to be well prepared, is to have understanding of what you're doing so that you can be effective in doing it. We have to plan every dimension of our lives, not to the letter, because we have to give room for God's fluid flow, for life to happen. But have a roadmap. A roadmap is important. It tells you where you're going. If you know you're going from this town to that town, from this county to that county, from this province to that province, you're moving from point A to B, and you generally have the distance, the time, you know the weather patterns and all these things. However, you may not necessarily be able to plan on the number of bumps you're going to hit. You may not be able to plan for the cow that will run by the road. You'll not be able to plan for the rain that may fall when you're 2 hours into your trip, and things like that. But the general overview on them, you generally know the hours, you have prepared your car, you've serviced it, you know who you're traveling with, you know what you need. Those plans are important to be effective on that trip. So this season of building, let's look at it as a trip going on. And your outcome will be dependent on your planning. You plan poorly, your outcomes will be poor. Your results will be poor. You plan well, you'll have great outcomes and you'll have high results. So even as we are preparing and accessing this plan, we also need to think about our time. Time is the most expensive resource, more expensive even than money. Once you lose time, you can never buy it back. You can't get it back. So what we do with our time, let it be well planned. Let's plan for how we use our time, what we're doing, and with whom we're doing it. What you use your time for and who you give your time is important to factor in this plan. And as we're accessing our plan, and I will give us some pointers on what we need to do to be able to build this initial plan that we're going out on the stage with. As you build this plan, you must include time with your loved ones. You must, because when we're looking at assignment, when you're looking at going to build, most people are looking at building their businesses, building their empires, building their name, building their influence, building their impact, transforming lives, creating a legacy, transforming generations. But mostly people forget their loved ones, the nucleus, the beginning of everything, the very people that God sent you on earth with. None of us chose our families. God chose them for us. Yes, we can say we chose our spouses, but as we became a family, they join that nucleus of God-ordained family. You must be able to make time within that plan. You factor in your family, your loved ones, your spouse, your children, your parents, the family that God gave you, factor in. And as we are going to be planning these various aspects of what we need to incorporate in our building plan, we're going to incorporate also the plans we have and that God is inspiring for us with concerning our areas of family. Let us not be too preoccupied thinking that God is linear. God is multidimensional and he's holistic. The Bible says that God desires that we prosper and we prosper in all things, in every dimension, including physical and spiritual, right? As we prosper, our souls also prosper. And we prosper also in health and in all dimensions. So think of all dimensions of your life. Those dimensions are going to be important in the plan. That way, when we have left a legacy, when, like we read it, that David, the word of God said yesterday when we read that when David rested after fulfilling his purpose for generation, all was done concerning him. You get it? It says, and David rested after he had fulfilled the purpose for his generation. After you fulfill the purpose for your generation, let it be said of you that the family was impacted like this, your spouse was impacted like this, your children were impacted like this, your community and your area of influence, a mountain of calling, your sector was also influenced like this. Don't be a statistic of when that person lived, their sector was transformed like this, and that is the end. Yes, you may go down in history as having really influenced God's kingdom and brought it on the earth as it is in heaven concerning that sector, but really missing the point concerning other dimensions of your life. So this plan, my prayer is that as we access the mind of God to build this plan, that it is a holistic plan. It is a plan that is not ignoring things that God also considers to be very important. We may be feeling very good and happy when you look at all these things that we're checking boxes and we're known and we're influenced and our names are known, but right where it matters, we lose it. My prayer is that that will not be us. If you look at the word of God, a story is told of King David. David used to lead the Israelites in war. He was the king, but he was also a general in the army. And one time, he had led the children of Israel, his army, into war. But he had left back, they all had left back their wives and children, obviously, because the men went to battle. And they got great victory, and they came back. But when they came back, guess what? The entire city had been burnt down. Their women and children gone. So they had great victory on their hands, but their most important resources, people, their wives and their children were gone. Let's look at our plans holistically, that even as we're going to war, as we're going to battle, we're going to do these great things, we have secured our loved ones, both spiritually and physically. We're giving them the attention that is required. And when I say attention, I don't mean sitting there to look at them. I'm talking about care, security, provision, the prayer, cover, all the things that, engaging, applying yourself with them, making the time to be available, imparting, teaching, those things. I can't be a teacher out there teaching the entire world, and I can't even teach my children and my family members here. So I'm left impacting many millions of people who are really receiving from me, but the people right around my doorstep do not have any access to me because I'm too busy teaching the world. May we be holistic in our plans. So that said, as a foundation for this plan that we're going to build, your journal, whatever it is you're journaling or documenting your plan, make sure it has those holistic dimensions. Marketplace assignment, your family, your spouse, your children, your community, things like that, as the Lord will lead you. But do not ignore your nuclear. Now, in this season of planning, we have to have an open mind. When you're planning for success, you have to have an open mind. You're creating the chessboard and you're preparing to play chess. And your preparation must be one that will lead you to success. So even as you look at the chessboard, the pieces that already existed and the pieces you're going to bring on the table, some pieces may need to move out of the table. They are no longer relevant for where you're going. Don't hold on and put in that plan things that are redundant, people that are redundant, material things that are redundant, that are not going to serve any value. You're in groupings and associations that are very redundant. They're not relevant for where you're going. That's baggage. You need to start part of preparation and creating this plan and accessing the plan of God for your building season is to ask God, what must I remove out of my system now? What baggage am I carrying? And what must I leave? What is still relevant for where I'm going? Which networks must I disconnect from and which ones must I remain in? Not because it's personal, just because it's not relevant for where you're going. Some people have phone books with 10,000 numbers, 20,000 numbers, but maybe only 100 are relevant, or less than 100. 1 to 10% are relevant. The rest is just storage in your phone book. A review of your relations. Who is part of where I'm going? And who needs to get off my bus? And it's not personal. You just don't need a bloated bus. There needs to be room for the people who must come into that bus. If the bus is full, there are going to be people standing outside who are relevant for where you're going, but there's no room for them. So you must cause excess baggage to alight from your bus. You must cause people who have already fulfilled their purpose for the season and the various seasons of your life thus far. They must disembark and allow them to go and fulfill the next dimension of their assignment, wherever God has planned and willed and ordained for them, so that you can make room for those that must come into the bus. If there are only 100 seats in a bus and there are 125 people, you're already overloaded, but there's 70 people outside waiting to get into your bus. Where will they sit? There's no seat for them. So you must review this 125 I have in my bus. Not just 75 need to come out, 95 need to come out, because you're at 125 and there's 70 down outside. So you look and see, God, who are the 20, 25 that must remain? Who are the 30 people that must remain in this bus? And who are the 95 that need to disembark? And it's not personal. It's just that we've got to make room for the season we're in, for where we're going, and allow those that must embark into the bus to come in. And that goes for material things. There's some things that you bought, you are not using. Where you are going, you never use them. They served their season in the past. Get rid of them. Donate them, bless people with them, sell them. Don't carry baggage just because you're a hoarder. You must just have things that are just taking space, things that are filling up space, things that are not serving at all. In fact, they're a stress factor and a burden to you. So I'm talking about the basic thing. We've not even begun to plan yet. I'm going to give the direction, but as you're preparing to plan, you must first start with that point. Go to the one who has called you. Access his mind, God's mind, for you for this season. And then begin to make the shifts that must happen and make room. Make room for God. Make room for God to work. And then begin to move forward. All right? So remember, in this time, because it's an accelerated time, we must really guard access to our time. Access is something that we must really guard, because time wasting, people who are draining your energy or your spirit, there's no room for people like those that will drain the assignment. Be like Nehemiah, extremely wise and discerning and very focused on what he must be doing and with whom. He can easily discern distractions, saboteurs. He doesn't give them time of day. When you look at Nehemiah chapter 2, we already know, and we did in the past couple of days, some aspects of preparation. So we know we have to pray, we have to access the mind of God. We've done a lot of those things. Now, today we're talking about building our plan and accessing our plan from God. I want us just to read briefly Nehemiah chapter 2 from 11 to 16. And here you will see how Nehemiah went about developing the plan before he began to deploy his assignment. Right now, we all know it's a season for building, year of building. We may even know what we're called to build. Nehemiah knew, oh my goodness, it's time to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and to repair the broken wall, the broken pieces, to bring restoration back to Israel. He knew. He had prayed about it, he knew it. But he spent time developing the plan before going out. And this is what I'm saying we must do. You must make time to prepare the plan. Make time to prepare the plan. Nehemiah chapter 2 from 11 to 16. You'll see how Nehemiah was developing a plan. Nehemiah was not just in a hurry to deploy, because he knew how he enters the stage will determine his success. Nehemiah was also being watched. Not everybody is waiting for you to enter that stage. Not everybody is waiting to receive you on those stages or those seats or positions. There are people whose livelihood is dependent on people's pain, people's problems. Because the more people are pained, the more they have problems, the more wealthy they're becoming. So why would they be interested in you coming to solve the problems? The enemies of the children of Israel were happy with Israel's downfall. They were happy with the decree that had been made by the Persian kings, that there is a ban against the Jewish people building. Yes, they will never rise again. Now, this one who is called to come and rebuild, you think that the enemies of Israel will be waiting for him to come and rebuild those walls? No. And Nehemiah discerned of that. So he started to spend time to build. Building this plan is also going to be a plan and a strategy for how you enter the stage, how you received, and how you outwit your enemies. And that's why this time is so critical and so important. These sessions, they are absolutely critical and important. Let's read and see what was going on from 11. Nehemiah is saying, I went to Jerusalem, and after staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few men. I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the one I was riding on. By night, I went out through the valley gate toward the jackal well and the dung gate, examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and the gates which had been destroyed by fire. Then I moved on toward the fountain gate and the king's pool, but there was not enough room for my mount to go through. So I went up the valley by night, examining the wall. Finally, I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate. Okay, that's 15. I want to pause there before I speak about 16. You notice that Nehemiah came into the city, into Jerusalem, quietly. He didn't come with his chariots of horses. He didn't come announcing. He didn't come in a way that attracted attention and was raising curiosity as, oh, who is this? Nehemiah, what's he coming to do? Okay. It would preempt the very action that he wanted to do. He came stealthily. He'd been in Jerusalem 3 days, just quietly studying. And it says, I didn't tell people, no one, he didn't tell anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. The timing of how you're going to share the plan and what you're going to share is going to be critical. Because not only are you affecting the enemies attacking it, but also you want receptibility to those whom you're called to. So it calls for wisdom in this plan. As you're planning, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's going to have plans like this. Jeremiah planned, I'll go to Jerusalem for 3 days. I'll just lie low. And then I'll be inspecting the walls at night. Because by day, people, you'd be walking, inspecting the walls. People are busy with activities. They'll be like, who is this man? What is he trying to do at the wall? And then you have no time to really inspect and ascertain what is needed of the task at hand. So he may just, by daytime, this day, he was just doing whatever he was doing, praying or whatever he was doing. But at night, then he would go and inspect the different aspects of the wall, different aspects of the wall. And he told no one, not those he was called to work with, not those he had traveled with, okay? Not those that he was going to work with, not the priests of Jerusalem, of the Jews. He told nobody. So this plan that we are building, this plan that God is giving to you, this plan that you're accessing from God concerning your assignment, it will have aspects of what you must do, when you must do it. When do you reveal the plan? To whom do you say it? When do you say it? How do you articulate it? Okay. And also it will have a plan of how you must inspect and understand the space and area that you have been called to build. Be it a community, be it an environment, be it a domain, spiritually, physically, be it a sector, be it your, whatever space it is, you need to be able to make time and go to inspect and understand that space. And it has to be the way that God leads you. So that plan should document what God is leading you to do and how He's leading you to do it. And people talk and shout, don't say, I'm coming to inspect the wall. I'm here for 4 days to inspect the wall. Use wisdom so that you can then come back again in the presence of God and say, this is what I've observed. This is how badly the gate has been damaged, God. Where do we start? When I was on the ground, that wall, that gate was by far, and that entry point of that wall is weaker than this one. God, where do I start? And who are the inhabitants around that gate? Who's the gatekeeper around this one, around this one, around this gate, around this well, around this spring? This is so and so. Oh, but that's not even a Jew. It means the gatekeeper is even foreign. What is strategy, Lord, that I use around this person who's not one of us? Okay, here, the gatekeeper, priest, God, how do I deal with the priests? This is still in planning phase when you're accessing the plan from God. So that you don't rush saying, yes, I know I'm called to rebuild the walls, and you don't even make it past 1 day. Because you're hit to the people who you've been called to hit you, and the enemies of your assignment hit you. So you have battle scars and injuries that you could have avoided had you just been wise and stealthy in your approach towards your plan. So number 1, you must scout the land. And you do this by acting in wisdom and in stealth. Do a mapping of the place that you're called to, the sector, the community, the environment, the domain, the space and place of calling. That mountain, that gate you're called to. Do a scouting, do a mapping. And this mapping should be both spiritual and physical. Because everywhere we are called, there is a spiritual dimension to it and there's a physical dimension to it. Let us take notes of what the current state versus the future state is. What is that future state that God wants you to do? That is now the building. Some things will need to be redone, rebuilt, but some things are new. They need to be brought into place. And you'll be building anew, both spiritually and physically. Take note of those. Take note of what must happen to achieve what God is asking, and list down these actions that must be done, both spiritually and physically, right? So that's one. Go in wisdom, inspect the land. Have an understanding, do a mapping, right? Number two, gain understanding of that area that you're called to. Gain an understanding. What has it been? What is it? What was it? What does it need to be? Gain understanding. And this understanding will be able to give you insights and direction, both physically and spiritually, of what you need, resources, people, materials, all these things that are needed. The finances, the spiritual support and empowerment and resources you need, the physical material things, the human resources, the kind of environment, nature, climatically, the kind of environment that's needed, how you need to operate in that environment, okay? It will tell you what your role is needed and what kind of people you need and what roles they need to play in that plan. All these kind of people I need, what role are they playing in this plan? This is all before you go to the stage, because when you go to the stage, you start to interact with the things, with the people. And you must be sharing things and articulating it in the way that gives you success. Okay? Number three, we've seen, do not announce yourself prematurely. Give yourself time to gain full understanding and appreciation of what's needed, the various dimensions of your assignment, and the roles that must be played. Let's look at Nehemiah 2:16. We continue there. It says, the officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, because as yet I had said nothing to the Jews or the priests or nobles or officials or any others who will be doing the work. You see, here you have government, you have the community, you have the church, you have families, you have your team members, you have the kings, right? You have different dimensions of people in your assignment. But before you begin to speak to any of them about what their role is going to be and how you want to work and collaborate, or the assignment that is at hand, you need to be able to be confident that you have an understanding of the task at hand and what is needed, how it's going to impact the government, how it's going to impact the church, how it's going to impact the king, how it's going to impact the community, how it's going to impact your partners, how it will impact the team, because you have to accumulate and get buy-in. The fourth thing which is important about this plan is, after you've understood all these things, and maybe not even after, I think at the beginning when you've asked God what you need to do, pray, like we have said in the last couple of days, of who is the supporter, that divine connection that you need at the onset of that vision. But here now, number four is you need divine support, angelic support, and also physical support from some critical people in order to begin. And whatever must be done to support your agenda through that divine connection must be in place. God is faithful. He always gives somebody a divine connection. He always does. Ask God to reveal to you who that person is, or who those people is, or who that institution is, or those partners, whoever they are. In Nehemiah's case, it was King Artaxerxes. The first thing is, he and Nehemiah sat down, and Nehemiah told him what he wants to do. He had given Nehemiah authority to go and build. In fact, Nehemiah was like governor of Judea, of Judah, of that region. Now, other governors needed to respect him. He had letters from the king. And then now he had an authority to speak, but that is not even enough. Even with that authority, his enemies would still have fought him. Sanballat and Tobias were fighting him, even though he had the authority. It took discernment and strategy. having spent time in developing a plan like this, that Nehemiah was able to succeed. When you're looking at the Jews whom he was called to work with, he saw the priests here, the church, I need them to do this, the priests, this is the role I'm going to have for them, the community. And then you have to have in your plan, you have to break down the assignment so that when you're sharing that plan, it's not overwhelming people you're talking to till they can't even see how they're going to play a role. You've already seen which people are around the East Gate, this community, that's what their role is going to be. So in my plan, people of the East Gate around there, they will do work around this part and the river and that well. Then these ones here, they're built like this, these ones will work here. So when you're going to talk to people, you're saying, oh, we need people you're overwhelming people. You're telling them, by the way, I've already thought about it, these are suggestions. Because you're placed here and here and here, how about you do this? This part of the temple, priests, I was thinking, you guys have the map, you've got the original plan, you knew how it was going to be built, so you can, prepare, the building slot for this part. I already have the resources, I have the king's letters, you already endorsed the receptability is just high. All they can say is, yes, it makes sense, okay? But you will realize that the fifth thing that you need to do is to pray to God for articulation. Articulation. This plan, how will it be articulated? Ask God in prayer as you're developing this plan. Because we're accessing this plan from God. How do I articulate it? And God gave Nehemiah the way that he was going to unleash this plan. Verse 17 says, then I said to them, this was now the people in Jerusalem, his people. Because all of the people who are going to resist him and make his life miserable, because the enemies were not going to join him to build. The king had given him resources, but the king's people were not Jews. They were not going to come and help him to build. These people, he had told the king is going back to his people so that they can rebuild the wall. So he needed support and participation from his people. But what was he going to tell them? He looked at how to articulate the situation and the plan to him by looking at their problem, their corporate problem. Their corporate problem is they were all in disgrace. They were all in desolation. Jerusalem had lost its grace and its glory. Whether it is priests, the women, the children, the men, no one could argue with that. And it hit home. And then he says, but don't worry, this is what solution I am bringing. I already have a letter from the king. I've already been given permission. I already have the resources and materials to rebuild us again. But this is what I want us to do. You see the trouble we're in? Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire, says Nehemiah. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. And then he said, I also told them, this is verse 18, about the gracious hand of my God upon me, and what the king had said to me. They replied, really? Then let's start building. So they began this good work. So part of the plan is to see how will I ensure that there is receptibility and acceptability as they go out. And in this plan that you're documenting, God will begin to drop in your spirit how you must do that in your area of calling. What are the priests interested in hearing? Because there's all the Jews, but the priests have the interest. The priests are interested in hearing that the temple will rebuild, they can quickly be resourced and supported to go back into the full service of God, their priestly duties. So guess what? They want to hear that and they're ready. The people who have been struggling to get water, and each time they get water, they're scared whether they're even safe, whether they'll be robbed, and everything. Tell them, we are going to now rebuild this part of the wall. And when you guys go to get water, you'll now be secure. Your animals will be secure. Your things will be secure. Oh my goodness, when do we start building? Do you understand? It's all in the planning and the timing. So today I have given a sermon, but this part of our preparation, it requires even 2 hours for me to speak, but the time is short. And I'm just going to give you some bites, enough for you to get the point and to really get the emphasis on how important it is to document this plan and make time in the presence of God to get a plan that will work. The plan is everything. It determines very many dimensions. I can't exhaust it here and how to do it, but I'm sure you've got the gist of it. So as we go into prayer right now, what I want us to do is to just pray to the Lord God Almighty to give us understanding about the area that we are called to build. And then the second prayer point is that as we seek his face, that he begins to help us to build this plan, because we are accessing the plan from the maker. He who has called us has the answers and solutions for that area that we're going to rebuild or to build. In some instances, we are going to build new things. In some instances, we are going to rebuild broken walls, broken lives. In some instances, we're going to begin new relations and new dimensions in the human dimension. But all these things and how we need to do them are going to be accessed from God himself. So I want us, as we go into this time of prayer, to just pray those two main prayer points. But in your private place, pray beyond these prayer points. Ask God to search your mind, to give you understanding, to give you revelation and wisdom, to give you answers, to give you solutions, to give you direction, to give you instructions, okay? To build your resource base, to send you to your divine helper, divine connector. All the people that are called to your plan must come in place, okay? You pray about all those dimensions. But for now, I just want us to pray those two prayer points. I'll do a corporate prayer that has different dimensions. And then we will go and ensure that in our quiet time, we're reflecting and building a plan that we will use as we go onto the stage in this season of building. God,